Hi, this is Cal Ripken Jr., and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
And the ML Sports Platter is back with you all over the major platforms. Download and subscribe to the podcast. Leave some feedback and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by our great, great friends over at Rosie's Corner. Pizza, pasta, hot and cold subs, wings, and more. Make sure you go ahead on over to Rosie's Corner if you're in and around central New York. By the way, you got to try their unbelievable garlic parm wings and gold fever wings as well. Rosie's Corner, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Tip of the cap, thank you as well to Barks and Rec Doggy Daycare, Axe Exotic Pets, Liverpool Physical Therapy, and your State Farm agent, Matt Graham. Like a good neighbor, State Farm and Matt are both there for you if you're in and around the state of New York and Central New York especially. Go get a free rate quote and find out about their rate drop as well. Auto, home, life, bank, health, and business. SyracuseInsuranceAgent.com. Matt Graham and State Farm. Like a good neighbor, they're both there for you. I'm going to bring in here momentarily one of the best in the business, a guy who I respect a great deal, doing amazing things as the Syracuse IMG football host and sideline man, play-by-play for men's lacrosse and women's basketball. Does a little bit on the side of the Q's TV and ACC Network Extra. Brian Higgins, who's on Twitter at Brian Higgins SU. I want to talk to him about the Gary Gait hiring for the men's lacrosse team and kind of touch on the football team going into 2021 and also women's basketball with the transfer portal and all the rest coming off of last season. But before I do that, I wanted to spend 10, 15 minutes chatting about Giancarlo Stanton specifically, because I don't know if people realize how much he is really blocking the roster. Brian Cashman is a joke. Aaron Boone's a joke. I think they should both be fired. And for more, you can visit pinstripepassion.com, where I write extensively about this, but more so about Hal Steinbrenner in the sense that the Yankees are never going to get better and nothing's going to change until Hal Steinbrenner wakes up. He's the owner of the team. He's the one who can make more decisions than even Brian Cashman. Take the control out of Brian Cashman's hands. You take it and you go hire a new GM. You go hire a new manager, or let the GM hire the manager. And I'm not saying his dad, George, who, by the way, he said was, I'm not like my dad, no kidding. I'm not saying he has to be like George Steinbrenner across the board. George Steinbrenner, I'm not saying he was a great baseball guy. He was an unbelievable businessman, and he had his moments as a great baseball guy, but then he was a terrible baseball guy by getting, signing free agents, old roster. And I know that many people argue, the 1980s Yankees, they had the most wins in a decade, remember? Well, that's true, but they didn't really have anything to show for it. They were a really great regular season team. Does that sound familiar? But George, at the end of the day, if you want to give me, what did he win? 6 World Series, right? 77, 78, 96, 98, 99, 2000. Went to the World Series in 01, 03, 81, right? You add pennants to those, to that resume. You give me those World Series, you give me those pennants, you give me those Hall of Famers. The Dave Winfield signing was probably up and down. Same with, the acquisition of Ricky Henderson. But Catfish Hunter worked. Reggie Jackson really, 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 really worked. And overall, I think you'd take George Steinbrenner. If you took the years he was owner of the Yankees in, 30 some odd years, right? 30, 35 years. If you took that and you said, okay, you're going to win the World Series 6 times in that time. You're going to win the pennant 9 times. Those are pretty good odds. You're going to be a pennant winner. You're going to the World Series once every 4 years, and you're going to win the World Series, once every, 5 to 6, give or take. Those numbers are still pretty good. Hal needs to care. And the Yankees, by the way, they want to stay under the luxury tax threshold. Even if they didn't do that and they made, let's say, one move here, one move there, it might not fix anything. This is just the team they are. They've been flirting with 500 as I record this, right? They're like just a couple games over. This is a team that if you go acquire someone, a pitcher or Tel Marte from Arizona or someone like that, are they instantly World Series favorites? No. They're just still not built the right way to win a World Series. It could be a trade or two to shake it up send a message, etc. Hal cares. Holy cow, here we are. We're back. But I don't see it. I don't think that there's that, that unbelievable, just fill in that extra spot. Put that extra, that puzzle piece, that last puzzle piece in, and we're good. Now we can hang the puzzle up on the wall. That Jake Westbrook for Dave Justice, the Eric Milton for Chuck Knobloch. Those kind of moves. I just don't see it. Or even before a season starts, Homer Bush and Graham Lloyd and David Wells to Toronto for Roger Clemens. Or way before that, you had Jeff Nelson, and Tino Martinez come over for Russ Davis and Sterling Hitchcock. I don't see one of those moves being like that. Holy cow, like that now we were pretty good before, we were a contender before, but now, boy, we really needed that guy. We really needed this guy. I don't think it'll change the Yankees that much. But even if you tried to go do something in the offseason, and even if you try to do something at the trade deadline, last year, this year, 2 years ago, you can't do anything because Giancarlo Stanton's contract, and really Aaron Hicks for that matter, is signed for what, $7 and $75? I mean, it's just absurd, the contracts Brian Cashman has given these two guys. But the Stanton one is even, that's the problem. Sure, Miami is footing some of the bill, but the Yankees, this is a $30 million DH who's wildly inconsistent. He's always hurt, can't play the field. There's a million things to consider with how Giancarlo Stanton hurts your roster, and because of just the contract, right? Can't do anything. Couldn't sign Trevor Bauer in the offseason. Again, and I'm saying you can't do anything because you've stated that you're not going over the luxury tax threshold. You're not. You've committed to not doing that. And so you're going to stick it out with Tyler Wade, and you're going to stick it out with Brett Gardner in center field, and you're going to stick it out with a struggling Clint Frazier. And even though he's been hitting Miguel Andujar, does anybody really trust him for the long haul? You're trusting Rougned Odor, to be like all these guys. You're calling up Chris Gittins, right? Like these are the kind of moves. You went out and got patchwork Jamison Tyone and Corey Kluber. How's that working out? As predicted by me, as predicted by Pinstripe Passion. Jamison Tyone is damaged goods. Corey Kluber is damaged goods. Brian Cashman was relying, and the guy has no idea how to form a pitching staff. They can't develop pitchers under his reign as well. But Jamison Tyone and Corey Kluber, like, who in their right mind thought that those moves were good? And they blew a ton of money on Kluber as well. Like, just go over the threshold and spend an extra $15 million and go get frickin' Bauer for 2 years, for God's sakes, right? Honestly, if it creates friction and competition with Garrett Cole, so be it. You guys want to win a World Series? You want to be like Yankee icons? Suck it up, go pitch, win, and deal with each other. Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson did. It was a different time. Well, it's still the same game. It's still the same game. The difference was back then, the newspapers ran the stories where social media now does, right? Like the newspapers, Daily News, New York Post, all New York Times, all the papers. You didn't have talk radio the way it is now. You didn't have podcasting the way it is, and social media. But the newspapers drove it to the point where at that time, newspapers were covering it the way then, for that era, all of our media does today in our era, right? It's pretty similar. When Reggie Jackson says, "I'm the straw that stirs the drink," and the papers go crazy and run with it, and it's, front page news, that's pretty similar to, Adam Schefter tweeting out something about Deshaun Watson, or tweeting out something that is controversial, or Adrian Wojnarowski, tweeting, doing Woj bombs during the NBA draft or during the regular season with something or an injury, or Kevin Durant to the Warriors, or friction inside a clubhouse and guys are spewing at each other on Twitter. Like, that was then. This is now. Like it's the same for the era. Giancarlo Stanton blocks the roster in so many different ways. Start with just free agency. Can't go out and get guys like Trevor Bauer. What about the trade deadline? Right? Like, what about trying to go out and get a Trevor Story, or trying to get anybody? Look at the Minnesota Twins. I would go get Andrelton Simmons in a heartbeat. I would have gotten him in the offseason because I think Gleyber Torres is better at second base. Go get him. Go get him. You blew it in the offseason. Go get him. Go give up Tyler Wade, although Aaron Boone's in love with Tyler Wade. He loves the outfield and infield play. He's versatile. He's Swiss Army knife to Wade. And has he called him Wadey yet, by the way? I don't know. But the reality is you can't go out and get somebody like that and put Torres in his natural second base position because you can't add payroll because you have the Stanton contract, right? You couldn't go get Trevor Bauer. You couldn't go get other pitchers. You couldn't go get Patrick Corbin. You couldn't go out and get people. You couldn't go out and sign JT Realmuto. I would have cut Gary Sanchez so fast and gotten JT Realmuto. Couldn't do it because you can't add payroll. So he kills you from a free agency standpoint. He kills you from a trade standpoint. And then from a roster standpoint, holy cow. I mean, we already know that these guys are too right-handed. They're too top-heavy with right-handed hitters. There are too many guys who do the same thing. They overswing. They swing for the fences. They're all from the right side. Many of them can only play one position, if that at all. Judge, when healthy, Voit and Stanton, Miguel Andujar, and Gleyber Torres are kind of like this now with the power thing, even though both of those guys have come around hitting a little bit for average. DJ LeMahieu is a right-handed hitter, but he's not necessarily a home run hitter. He's a contact hitter. What am I getting at? Well, DHing, Giancarlo Stanton is nice, but what happens when you want to DH Aaron Judge and you want to place somebody else in right field and give him a couple of days off, but you want to have Stanton in the lineup too? Right? Like what? Luke Voit. When Luke Voit is in there and he's playing first base, again, if you had a real shortstop, you could play the shortstop at shortstop. You could play Gleyber Torres at second, DJ LeMahieu at first. You got Gio Urshela at the hot corner, right? That's your infield. That's your infield. And then you could DH Luke Voit. Oh, wait, Giancarlo Stanton's your DH. Which is why, again, with all of the overload of right-handed hitting, I've said for a long time, just trade Luke Voit. Should have traded him. And by the way, a lot of people think Brian Cashman won that trade. Go look at what Gallegos has done for the St. Louis Cardinals. Yeah, he's not a superstar. He's not a slugger. But I get it. Luke Voit plays in New York. He's a big muscle man. He's a fan favorite. Blah, blah, blah. I get it. But for what St. Louis needed and wanted at that time, and for how important long men are in today's bullpen age, Gallegos has actually performed as well, if not better, than Voit. If you go watch it and go look at the numbers, trust me, Giovanni Gallegos has actually performed equal to, if not better, than Luke Voit. So if anything, it's not a win, it's a draw. Giancarlo Stanton blocks the roster. Free agency, trades, positioning, and because he can't play the field, you also have to run out Brett Gardner and Clint Frazier all the time. You got to try and ponder. Oh, Tyler Wade, just go play center. Go play left. Miguel Andujar, play left. Go play left field. We had you at third. Now we got you in left. Might want to put you at first a couple times. I mean, what is this team doing? It's very simple. Put guys in their right position. They haven't done that. And part of why they're not able to do it is because Giancarlo Stanton blocks what you can do from a versatility standpoint. There's no versatility on this team. Judge, Stanton, Voit, they all do the same thing, right? Chris Gittens now is in there. He's the same player too. He's a power guy. He's a power infielder. He's 6'4", 250, right-handed, and he swings for the fences. It's the same player. Gary Sanchez, same player. I just named 5 guys. That's half your order, right? That's half your order who do the same things. And you don't have versatility. You can't, remember Ben Zobrist a few years back? How unbelievable he was for the Cubs and for the Rays. I mean, a Ben Zobrist type guy is exactly what the Yankees need. A guy who can play multiple positions, can hit from the left side, is a really good glove. Like, he's a Swiss Army knife kind of player. They need that kind of player. They really do. Giancarlo Stanton blocks the roster, and it is absolutely brutal. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our great friends at the Allen Angus Pub. Go ahead and visit Allen Angus on Harrison Street if you're in and around Central New York. Home of the best darn Angus burger in town. Go check out their specials every week on Twitter and Facebook and allenangus.com. CNOI Electrical, thanks to them, as well as Axe Exotic Pets, Camillus Golf Club, Ken's Auto Detailing, and our friend Heather Saxton from Hunt Real Estate. Folks, buying and selling a home, it's a nightmare, right? It's time-consuming, it's stressful, you name it. Look, go with Heather Saxton today. She makes it a little bit more easier, and she makes home more than just a place. She makes it a feeling. 315-727-3313, 315-727-3313. 3313. Heather at Hunt on Facebook. She's a licensed real estate salesperson under the Hunt Real Estate umbrella. Make sure you go with Heather Saxton today. HeatherSaxton.HuntRealEstate.com. HeatherSaxton.HuntRealEstate.com. And Heather at Hunt on Facebook. Let's bring him in, shall we? Brian Higgins, the terrific men's lacrosse play-by-play man, women's basketball play-by-play man, football sideline reporter, and Q's TV and ACC Network Extra as well. Covering the Orange, does a great job, and he's on Twitter at Brian Higgins SU. We're going to get into a lot of things on the Hill, most notably the hiring of Gary Gait, guy who I call the Michael Jordan of lacrosse, is the next head men's lacrosse coach to follow John Desko. Higgs, how are you, bud? Welcome aboard.
Hey, you as well. Roll along here with a lot of crazy news here I'm sure we'll get into.
No doubt. Before I get to the Gary Gait hire and the expectations and what it means for Syracuse men's lacrosse, can you kind of put into perspective a little bit about what John Desko has done and what you think his legacy is, and working with him and seeing just up close really one of the most accomplished resumes in lacrosse history?
And I think the last thing you said there, Mike, is key. I mean, you look at his resume, and legitimately there is not another person in the history of the sport that can equal his resume when you look at playing career, assistant coaching career, and what he did with a head coach. And, you know, I think Coach Desko, I mean, he certainly gets plenty of respect within the lacrosse community, but I don't think he's ever really been, grouped when people talk about it amongst the all-time greats. And I think that's silly. I mean, you look at what he's accomplished. I just don't think he ever really got the credit he did for when he was Roy Simmons Jr.'s lead assistant. I mean, obviously Roy had the magic dust. I mean, he had the little extra that kind of put everything over the top. But I mean, Coach Desko was there and was an exceedingly important part of those 6 titles. So yeah, he won 5 as a head coach, and the 6 as an assistant. I think you kind of look at the totality. And, okay, are there better coaches? You can make an argument. You can argue whatever you like. But to not include him in that argument, and I don't think he really has been, I think that's foolish.
Tell you what, and there's a little bit of the international thing where he won a silver medal as head coach of the of that team. And, I know that the sports are different. I know Coach K is in men's college basketball. I know that the levels are different and some of the difficulty probably is a little higher to win a men's basketball title because of the amount of games and the longer season and more games and all that. Okay. But Coach K also has 5 titles, Brian. And you know what? He did it over 4 decades or so, and Desko's got 5 in half that time.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, certainly it is harder to win the basketball title, just the way that tournament is and the way the lacrosse tournament is. I mean, the lacrosse tournament's getting a bear to win one now, but
sure.
It used to be you could win it at least in Coach Desko's first. I believe it was 2 titles he won before they changed the format, and then going back before that, you could win a title in just 3 games. But still, they won the games. I mean, and he was very good at the last game of the season. Like when they got to the finish line, he finished it off more often than not. And that goes without saying. I mean, you get to that last game, say what you want about depth of the sport or anything. You get to the last game, the other team looking at you they are you in one way or another. And he knew how to win those games when it really mattered.
No doubt. Brian, what does it mean hiring Gary Gait?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting hire. Obviously, Gary, and I think we've seen it with the reaction amongst the community, the lacrosse community. The Gary Gait name, and he last played college lacrosse now more than 30 years ago. The Gary Gait name still means something. And I think it means something to the lacrosse community, for one. It means something to the Syracuse fan base, which is important. It means something still to recruits who never saw him play, which is important in the way. I mean, he's the Michael Jordan of lacrosse. I mean, everybody says that. And when everybody says that, that means something to 16-year-olds, even though they never saw him play. So that matters. Now, we'll see what can happen. He's been a very good women's lacrosse head coach. Like, he's been a college head coach now for 14 years. And yeah, they never won the title, but they've been a top 5 team basically the entire time he's been a head coach, give or take. So he knows how to run a program. Now, can this tie into the move he has to make to the men's program? I think that's where we're all very interested to see how it works out. I think we're all hopeful of it. Obviously, Gary knows the game. He is not, pigeonholed as a women's lacrosse head coach. He's a lacrosse guy. He loves whatever kind of lacrosse exists. So the hope is that's able to carry over.
Expectations obviously are always high. We know about the history, the tradition, the titles, the Simmons family, on and on it goes, what Desko did and carried it through. But are they going to be at an all-time high for 2 reasons? One, they haven't won since 2009, and I do know how hard it is. I'm with you on that, and I just talked to Charlie Lockwood on this show not too long ago, and he put it into perspective of how hard it is to win now compared to his era. 2009, though, still for Syracuse is a little bit of a long time at the same time, and also because of the Gait hire. Are expectations going to go higher for this program?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think so, because I don't think they can. Go back to, this is just a few months ago. When Coach Desko was in charge, let's go back to February. What was expected in February? The national championship. Well, you can't expect more than the national championship. So I don't think the expectations actually change. I get what you're saying, but as crazy as it sounds, Syracuse's expectations as a program literally cannot get higher. They are the same every year, and they've been the same every year for almost 40 years now. And that is, at minimum, the Final Four, whether it happens or not. That's the expectations. And then the expectation is you win the national title every year. Even though that's unrealistic and impossible, it's the expectation. So to say it gets higher, no. Now, obviously, it'll be significant, but I think that's what Gary embraces. That's what John Desko embraced. That's what Roy Simmons Jr. embraced. That's the fun of it, I think, for those guys, that it's really hard to do, but to pull it off is all the more rewarding.
Let's hit one football and one women's basketball before I let you run. Football squad going into 2021. What do you like? What do you dislike? We should have a full dome, right? If we can get a sellout for any of the games. But, we'll have fans. We'll get 10, 15, 20, 30,000, whatever it is, or more. What are you seeing here going into 2021 for Dino Babers and crew?
Yeah, from the sounds of it, they're barring any medical setbacks or anything, there won't be any COVID restrictions on attendance or anything like that going forward, which is great. And we'll see. The hope is that last year was an outlier for 8 million different reasons. The COVID season I realize, obviously some teams did well, some teams did not, but it just made it such a screwy thing that the hope is everything that went wrong last year was a one-off. And then the injuries last year were at an unbelievable level, and they were at just the worst places. You lose your quarterback, and you're basically done at that point. Once Tommy got hurt, the offense just couldn't do anything the rest of the year. And the hope is now, with the transfers coming in and the freshmen and DeVito back healthy, that you have a competition in that room, that whomever is named the starter, and let's, for argument's sake, just say it's Tommy again, that if something happens this year, that they will have a better answer to it. And going back to Dungy's last year, Dungy was phenomenal that year. That's one of the all-timer seasons we've seen in a long time, but he didn't make it through that season unscathed, and DeVito was there to pick it up a few times during the year. So that's the hope this year. Obviously, the offensive line really struggled, certainly early last year. Mm-hmm. You're getting basically everybody back. You're adding in this Chris Bleich coming in from Florida and some other guys in the mix. So the hope is they have taken a step. And we'll see on defense. I kind of liked the general idea of what was going on. And then you got your 3 studs on the back end. Their seasons, 2 of them ended early for various reasons. When you lose Cisco to the I've never seen an injury as freaky as that in my life, as far as something that came out of the blue. The hope is you get some consistency, because you got a lot of young guys that gained experience. So honestly, Mike, it's hard to say. And I think the one thing that'll really help in many ways, and this is not just Syracuse, is just by the nature of not having to play league games every week, the schedule has to be a little bit easier just to get your teeth into at the beginning than it was last year. So hopefully you get some momentum from something that happens early in September that you can at least sustain, as opposed to last year where, I mean, you saw it took a couple of shots, basically gut punches to the whole team early in the season, and that's really hard to recover from.
No doubt. I think so much of it does depend on the offensive line. You mentioned Cisco, and then you've got Melifonwu here. I mean, I think these guys could be good pros, Brian. I really do. I think in the right system, and they're obviously guys who are easy to coach. I think they've got bright futures for the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Melifonwu's got every physical measurable that you want.
Yeah.
So he's got a shot to be a good player in the league. And Cisco is as driven a guy to succeed as we've had. I mean, this is a guy that came in early as a freshman, and like, who's this guy? I mean, it wasn't a bad recruit, but he wasn't like a 5-star guy. He wasn't a huge recruit. And he's starting by the fall and leading the nation in interceptions like a week later. Did it the whole season. And he was in phenomenal shape at the beginning of this season. And the thing about the injury that I don't know, there's never good news when you hurt your knee, but, people come back from ACLs a lot easier than even just a handful of years ago. So hopefully his recovery is on that path. And it was such a fluke injury that it's not like it shows that he has any, significant further and future risk for it. And he's a guy, I mean, like, he's a guy that is driven to do it. And I think we've seen it in the league. If you're not the 5-star guys, the ones that make it and hang around are the ones that are going to outwork the other guy. And that's Cisco.
Final one for you. What happened with Syracuse women's basketball in the transfer portal? And do you think the transfer portal is just simply getting out of control?
No, to the extent that I do not think the future of the portal is what we saw this year, and I speak not just for Syracuse, but for basketball at large, and specifically basketball, because of the COVID year, everybody getting an extra year of eligibility. And the main thing I've said specifically to Syracuse, and okay, why did it happen like this? This year wasn't fun. And I'm not speaking for Syracuse. I'm speaking for everybody. Now, it was a lot more fun probably if you were Stanford and won the title at the end of it. But, it was not a fun year. And this is not even just a basketball thing. It wasn't fun for any of them to go through a bajillion tests and, okay, you're on a road trip and it's nice out, but don't go outside because you can't leave your room. Stuff like that isn't fun. And then when you start losing some games, then it gets, I can't imagine the mental toll on you. You're doing all your classes on Zoom, and I realize, there's a lot of positives still. College was still free. So it's not the end of the world here. But I think, the transfer portal is going to be more a part of our lives. But to say, a year like this where, everyone leaves and it's a whole new team, I'd kind of write that off as a one-off just due to this being the strangest year of all time.
Brian Higgins, QSIMG football host and sideline man, play-by-play voice for men's lacrosse and women's hoops, does a great job covering the Orange. He's on Twitter at Brian Higgins SU. Don't forget about the ACC Network Extra and Cuse TV as well. Higgs, always love having you on, man. Have a great summer, pal.
All right, Mike, you too. Good to catch up.
The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College. For every and in life, Bryant and Stratton College 2- and 4-year degrees are always available, and they do, in fact, start soon. Make sure you log on to bryantstratton.edu. That's bryantstratton.edu for more information. The official college of the ML Sports Platter is Bryant and Stratton College. And by the way, if you're in and around Central New York, you're looking to stay at home and craft that degree and specialize something, hey, go to Bryant Stratton right there in Syracuse at James Street location or the Liverpool location. Bryant Stratton College, the official college of the ML Sports Platter. Tip of the cap, thank you as well to Rosie's Corner, the Vince Aguirre Consulting Group, Prestwick Golf, and Welch & Company Jewelers. For the best jewelry around, head on over to welchjewelers.com. They've got necklaces, bracelets, watches, you name it, at Welch & Company Jewelers, welchjewelers.com. Ask an expert about all things jewelry and shop the showcase today Welch and Company Jewelers is a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor and the official jewelry store of the platform. Thanks big time to Brian Higgins. What a great job he does. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports, and make sure you download and subscribe to this podcast all over the major platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Deezer, CastBox, iHeartMedia, Amazon Music, you name it. And please do leave a 5-star review and some feedback. And I should also mention you can get me on all the major platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and IGTV, part of Instagram, for my hot take ML Sports takes, and of course, my 9-minute videos from Rosie's every Friday. Rosie's Corner, of course, pizza, wings, pasta, and more. If you're in and around Central New York, stop by Rosie's today. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.